Spire O, and Sue Davis Killian.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak before you tonight. I'm Kimberly Spires O, and I'm a proud member of the District Diversity and Equity Committee. We have spent a number of months, quite a few hours, discussing and debating and making contributions to the policy that is before you tonight. And we strongly urge you to adopt it as written. We put a lot of thought into the choice of words that we used, and we very much look forward to being able to implement it and provide you with feedback on all different aspects of the operations of the school district. We have assembled a group of people who represent the very strong and amazing diversity of our school district, and I think the groups that we have assembled and the individuals there are really representative of the population and the community that we all serve in the district, and they have a lot of ideas and a lot of experience and perspectives that I think are very valuable to all of the decisions that you make. I'm going to yield some of my time in case you have questions for us about any of the choices that were made in recommending it. We want to thank the staff that provided us with all of the information and did the actual writing and implemented all of the edits that we requested, especially Brian Knowles. And I'm now going to defer to the president of our group. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Could have said it better myself. I am Sue Davis Killian. I'm chair of the District Diversity and Equity Committee. And as Kimberly stated, our committee was very invested in the creation of this policy throughout. Some people might think that an equity policy is not needed because, of course, we all believe in equal opportunities for all students. However, every single person alive today has some sort of implicit bias that affects our decisions, whether we're aware of it or not. The key to the success of this equity policy is acknowledging that bias and ensuring that it doesn't affect our actions or our students. As we know, we can't control our thoughts and feelings, but we can control our actions. I would urge everyone watching this and everyone in this room that if you have not already, to take an implicit bias test online. You can just Google implicit bias, and it has tests for a bunch of different categories that take about 10 minutes each. Categories like race, gender, disability, etc. It's very revealing. Since I think you all know that I am with the Gold Coast Down Syndrome Organization, so one of the tests that I took, just for kicks, was the one on disability bias. The results show that I have a strong preference for people without disabilities. I figure I better not tell my daughter with Down syndrome the results of that test. But it just goes to show you that even those of us that are sure that we have no bias actually do have bias that we don't acknowledge, that we never knew about. And the point of this is that without a real policy that's really looking at these biases, we will never create truly equal opportunities for all students that deal with both the explicit bias and the implicit bias. The policy has the potential to do that task, and I applaud you as the board in taking on this policy. The Diversity Committee looks forward to helping the district on this path towards a more equitable tomorrow. And I want to wrap it up with a quote from Nelson Mandela. "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite." Thank you.
I would also like to recognize that other members of our committee, some of whom we were told to arrive at 1 o'clock, so some of them had to leave already, but they're all here to support the policy and the efforts of the committee. And I'd like them to, anyone who is still here, to please stand. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Mr. Oswald.
Thank you, and I do want to thank the District Diversity Committee for your support in this work. And if Dr. Rees, if you could come up, we're going to workshop policy 1.0971, District Diversity Committee, and propose new policy 1.041, equity policy. Dr. Rees, and I believe we also have Mr. Brian Knowles, who will be joining you as well.
All right. So we are, today is a monumental day, at least for the District Diversity Equity Committee, for the district, and the history of Palm Beach as we bring forward today proposed changes to policy 1.0971, which is the District Diversity and Equity Committee, as well as the new proposed policy for equity 1.41, which is the equity policy. You know, I think they just said it. I do want to thank the District Diversity Equity Committee that were here. We did have some more members that were here at 1 o'clock, but you know, their dedication and their passion that they bring to the monthly meetings has been outstanding. Those are appointed members by you, the board, who are there. Since the last year, we've been working hard. We have quorums, we have good debates, and we're really trying to do, and they are representing you and their communities to do what's right for the district. And so we're really excited about the work that we've been able to do with this policy. And so a little bit about a history of the policy. When the strategic initiative came out 3 years ago, at least with the strategic initiative 2 around cultural competence, we started to talk around a word called equity, which I've heard several times this evening, which is the right thing to have been doing. We're disaggregating data. We're talking around equity. And so when we started looking within our initiative, we started to talk about where is the policy. And so we went and we saw that within the District Diversity Equity Committee, there was already a lot of language within that policy, the District Diversity Equity Committee, that talked about some of the things that we wanted to do. So we brought that forth to the District Diversity Equity Committee and said, hey, what do we think about a policy? And so that started over a year ago, talking about how we were going to do this. We looked at over 8 different districts, urban districts, regular districts, from East Coast to West Coast, around equity policies that were already out there. Some of those being Washoe County, Portland. We looked at Newburgh. We looked at Fairfax, Hillsborough, and really looking at all those different policies to make sure what do they have, which are recent policies, and then what can we, take from there and then really make our own policy as we started doing that. Once we started drafting that data, we did have 2 community meetings. We had community meetings open to the public to come and share what do they think around the language. That helped shape our policy as well. And so what you're going to see today is the revision of the District Diversity Equity Committee, which is really going to talk about, once we pulled language from that committee to create a new policy around equity, that's why you see the revisions to the District Diversity Equity Committee. We took language from there on the purpose and mission, added it to the equity policy, and then we revised some language within that policy that didn't need to be there, revised some minor changes, and with that, then that was the revision. So there are not many changes to that District Diversity Equity Committee, but those are the changes that you'll see today. Which then leads us to a brand new policy. And when we look at the brand new policy, some of the things that we're excited about in that policy, and if you have it there with you in the numbers, I'll refer to some of those. So really, because we kept talking about equity, we needed to define equity. And so we, as a district already, through our strategic initiative, have been doing that with our principals, our assistant principals, and different settings in PD that we've had. So we've defined in this policy equity as an outcome and equity as actions. And so when we look at equity as an outcome, which is a noun, we talk about it in the policy line 6. Equity is the state that would be defined or achieved if a student's success and their well-being was no longer predicted by social, cultural, and economic factors, right? And so when we can no longer predict school grades, and not only in education, but across health, across the legal system, when we can no longer predict that, we are reaching equity as an outcome. And then actions, there's 3 action steps there. You see A, B, and C. Number one, we're talking about dismantling and harmful and inequitable practices and policies. You heard Sue Davis talk about eliminating those explicit biases and implicit biases that we may have. And then really we want to truly create an inclusive environment that's culturally responsive for not only the adults but the students within our buildings. The second piece really kind of defines the difference between equity and equality. And equity is giving students what they need when they need it. And not all students need the same thing at this given time, so we define that within this policy. And then the third piece is really we want to cultivate the unique gifts and the talents that all kids have, and that we're looking at the proactive measure of our students when they walk in through the door, not looking at it through a deficit model. So that I wanted to spell that out with you because I think that's important, and that's within the purpose and the mission. And then we also specify equitable school and instructional practices. We specify the board's belief, hopefully through taking it through the District Diversity Equity Committee, belief regarding equity. We also included language that states the district will adopt policies and procedures intended to achieve equitable access for all students. We added that language in there. And then the next bullet, we started to identify who are those underrepresented groups. And so starting in line 18, you see that, well, that's our policy number 18, but starting on line 25, you start seeing those groups that are underrepresented that we've labeled within the policy. And then lastly, included language that's regarding eliminating inequitable practices in our district so that we can make sure that we reach all of our students and that they all succeed. And so within that, that's the beginning piece, which is the purpose, and then we're going to lead you now through some desired outcomes that we believe hopefully this policy is intended to do. And again, we've wordsmithed this many, many times through cabinet, through executive cabinet, through community, and through our committee. And so we believe we brought to you some good language. And so school board will implement policies that promote equity and access for all students by the following. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Brian, who's going to who helped shape a lot of these, and he's going to lead us through the first few.
All right. Desired outcomes. Our first desired outcome is the district will identify and address systemic deficiencies. We're going to kind of look at some of the things that create gaps in academic achievement and just kind of look further in closing that gap. B, the district will provide leadership that is committed to identifying and working to bring resolutions to disparities and disproportionalities and practices that inhibit the success of some students. Also, the district will be committed to allocating financial resources to address the needs of students who do require additional interventions to achieve academic success. The district will also select and develop instructional materials that are historically accurate and represent the experiences of a diverse school community that we have here in Palm Beach County. The district also will select and develop instructional materials that include the following: the study of African Americans and the contributions of African people to society, the study of Hispanic Latino contributions to the United States and the world, the study of indigenous people's contributions to the United States and also the world, the study of women's contributions to the United States and the world, and also instruction to expand the knowledge and understanding of awareness of individuals with disabilities, the history of disability, and the disability rights movement. Also, F. Okay, cool. Okay. Is that the district will ensure that each student will have access to multiple pathways of success. And this means that all students will have access to advanced academic programs. Students should not be prohibited access to gifted programs or accelerated courses on the basis of race, gender, socioeconomic status, native language, sexual orientation, gender identification, country of birth, or disability. G is that we also will utilize data and evidence-based research to address racial disproportionality in student discipline and placement in special education programs.
And we added some new language. I think you received an updated copy of this where we had actually gone back and forth, and we added the language there to G, where we added disability eligibilities to that, and that was one of the latest additions, so you may have gotten a new copy of that, and we were able to work that out. So if you keep going, part of the study from the NYU talked about students, actually staff that looks like our students, and talks about HR. And so recruiting and making efforts to retain highly qualified administrators and teachers that reflect the racially and linguistically diverse community of Palm Beach. We've been working with HR and how HR's initiatives are embedding cultural competence and equity, and so we make this continual piece, put that within our desired outcomes. If you look at we talk about providing evidence-based professional learning. What is our professional learning now to our staff going to look like that focuses on understanding and teaching of a diverse population? And that's part of what we've done in our first year of strategic initiative with Beyond Diversity. We've started that, and we've got much more to go. Encouraging effective partnerships with families, students, and communities to examine issues related to inequities within our schools. You heard the communication plan today. This has to hit our parents. Our parents need to know what we're doing. Our community needs to know what we're doing, and putting it in policy helps us do that and really get to where we need to do, where our partnerships are expanding. When we look at K, it's ongoing and open communication to help all stakeholders informed of the district strategic plan, specifically how we're embedding equity and cultural competence in our practices. We put that in there. It's part of the initiative. L, utilizing formal and informal evaluative tools to assess equitable instructional practices and programs. You heard a little bit about the focus model today. They took some of the information of how we can have equity and access, and as they looked at that new focus model, we looked at pieces in there, and we continue to use our dashboard, different pieces, and so this will continue putting it in policy to have formal and informal ways of how we're going to assess that. And then M, which is actually, we put the District Diversity Equity Committee in there, where we are they're the ones that are advising the board and superintendent in regards to advice on equity and access, diversity issues, and the strategic plan as stated in the policy. So that puts it in there and refers back to the District Diversity Committee. And so we try to make it as quick and brief, but it is a very important and impactful policy that we're really excited to bring forward to a workshop today for you all.
All right, questions? Mrs. Brill.
Thank you, and I just have a request. When you were reading the desired outcomes, the PDF that's attached to our agenda is not what you were reading. It doesn't have the disability language in there. If you would make sure that we get a copy of the updated presentation. Thank you.
On the committee membership, a very quick question. When we originally created this policy, there was a lot of discussion about what the size of the committee and whether or not they'd be able to have a quorum and everything. Has there been an issue on that? Has that been?
No, we have had quorum at our last several meetings. We've had quorum, and because we're doing the work and doing that, we are seeing that, yes.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. The next part.
All right, thank you, and good work with the team on that creation, and we'll have that first read come forward. The next policy, I'll ask